Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to another edition of Sonya on Air. I am your host, Sonya Hudson Payne, and I'm here to normalize the celebrity experience with dope conversations you can relate to. Oh my goodness, today I have a great guest joining the Sonya on Air family. I have none other than Freeway Rick Ross, who is notably known, who the LA Times referred to as a drug kingpin, having made $300 million in profits, which is the same as $900 million today. Oh my gosh. Maybe I should get in that business, but maybe not. Now, for those of you who don't know this incredible story, you will after today's edition of Sonya on Air. Now, in 1996, Ross was sentenced to life without parole, which he appealed while in federal prison, and his sentence was shortened to 20 years, and he was released in 2009. We're going to unpack all of that, trust me, so make sure that you stay tuned in. Now, Freeway Rick Ross's formative years and his environment directly impacted and fueled his desire to sell crack. And at 59 years old, the real Rick Ross went from seeing his mother kill his uncle, to becoming the world's first millionaire crack dealer, to now launching his own cannabis business. We're going to unpack that too. From CIA Contra cocaine conspiracy to cultural icon. We're going to talk about so much on this edition of Sonya on Air. I am just excited to be in the studio, just unpacking Freeway Rick Ross's life. We're going to also talk about his lawsuit, because he did sue the rapper Rick Ross. We're going to unpack so much. I want you to really understand this individual that we have known to learn so much about through the tabloids, through whatever media platforms that's out there. But we're going to talk about his early childhood, all the way from elementary school, junior high school, almost getting into college, selling drugs, going through the whole criminal injustice system, fighting that because the government was involved in a lot of illegal activity, beating all of that and surviving, and telling us with full transparency and honesty what he went through. This is such an amazing story. It really is. And I did so much research to try to understand this individual, because, you know, we read so much information. We tune into our televisions and we just believe everything that someone else is reporting. So this is what this platform is aimed to do. And I think I do it quite successfully too. Normalizing the celebrity experience, putting individuals in front of you so that they can tell their own story. I can't tell the story. I can read whatever documents, I can read whatever books, I can talk to whatever individual knows the individual and bring you the information, but it just isn't the same. So when I go hard body making sure that I'm bringing you all of these amazing guests. What I found out in my research, you know, what I confirmed for me, the government's illegal activities and so many things. But we're definitely going to, like I said, unpack everything with Freeway Rick Ross, because from CIA Contra cocaine conspiracy to cultural icon, from illegal means to legal legacy, I bring you none other than Freeway Rick Ross. How are you, Rick?
Yeah, I'm starting it right now.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Sonya?
I'm well, and it's Sonya.
Sonya. Well, you know what? Everybody say I changed everybody's name.
I do the same thing, too. I really do. I'm horrible with names, so I'll give you a free pass for this one, okay?
But I'm great in Ebonics.
I understand that. Now, we have, just a limited time, but I want to make sure that I just get everything inside this conversation, because during this conversation, I really want us to unpack your childhood, the years you sold drugs and amassed millions by the age of 24, getting arrested and sentenced because of a CIA informant, appealing the decision and winning, to using your learned business acumen to now have a legal cannabis business. Now, let's start with your childhood. and the pivotal moments that helped me understand. Freeway, Rick Ross. Now, you were born on January 26, 1960, as Ricky Donnell Ross. And most blacks born into poverty share a common thread of traumatic childhood experiences. And the first traumatic childhood experience that happened to you was when your mom shot and killed your uncle. And the reason why I want to start there is because I really want people to understand that there are so many social and societal and environmental issues that kind of make people who they are. So please share that story with us at the age of 3 when you saw your mom shoot your uncle and kill him.
Well, it was very traumatic for me. At that time, I didn't really know what death was.
Mm.
But I slowly started to learn that my uncle was never coming back, that I was never going to get to see him again. I didn't get to go to his funeral because my mom was in jail, and I was staying with some strangers, her boyfriend's mother at that time, because we had moved to California, so we really didn't have many. I mean, we had family members out, but and I don't really understand how I wound up with them, but. And for me, it was really traumatic because I didn't really know anybody in California. I was really like, my mom was my sole person in the world. You know, it's like I'm with my mama. You know,
Yeah.
So to lose that bond when she went to jail, I believe was a pivotal point in my childhood.
Yeah.
I believe that could be one of the reasons that I missed learning my ABCs. I mean, it just could have so many effects on a child at such a young age that I mean, and even I took that into my adult life with me too. You know, because there's been times that I had to decide if a person should live or die, and you know, I usually ruled on. I mean, I always ruled on the side of living because I totally got that. You know, once a person was dead, that they weren't coming back, and I knew how much I missed my uncle.
Yeah, that could have affected, anyone. I don't care if you were age 3 years old or 30 years old, but not only having witnessed your mother shoot and kill her own brother, your uncle, you also had an absent father in your life who lived close to where you were living at the time, and you didn't even know it. So with the absence of your father and what happened with your mother and now her incarcerated, how did you learn, who to look up to as role models, and who were your role models?
Well, I didn't really have a role model I until I turned around 13 years old. And that became Arthur Ashe at that time. And, I was modeling myself from Arthur Ashe from a distance. And that's when I started playing tennis.
Right.
Before that, I was just kind of like drifting through life, just doing what the other kids did, what some of the older guys did. I can remember the first time I saw the Crips, and I wanted to be a Crip. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world to see a bunch of black guys gathered together. It looked like they were having fun, wrestling and just doing the things that teenagers do. And me with my youngness, not really knowing what a Crip was, what a gang member was, I wanted to be a part of it.
Right.
But I was lucky that at 12, 13 years old, a guy put a tennis racket in my hand, and I fell in love with tennis.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, but I just want to backpedal just a little bit more, because after that pivotal moment when you moved to LA from Texas, and you did mention that you didn't even learn your ABCs, and I'm just, just dumbfounded by the systems that we have that really do more harm to us as blacks than good, but just talk a little bit also about why did the teachers pass you along for so long and didn't even, teach you how to read or write? And did your mother even know that you were illiterate?
I'm not sure if my mom knew or not. She have known, but I don't know if. 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 if she knew what she needed to do to help me
Mm,
out. You know,
right.
it's like with black people in general. Um, a lot of times we don't know what we need to be
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah, that's true.
so we find ourselves doing what we see others do, who are in different positions than we are, uh, financially, mentally, educationally, and we try to mimic their steps, and we're not in position to do that.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I believe that my mom, great person. She was a great person, great mom, loved me dearly, but
Hmm.
she didn't really know what to do with a young male
Got you. Got
like
you.
myself.
Got you. I understand. I remember when I found out that I was pregnant, and I actually prayed and I said, God, please don't give me a boy because I don't know how to raise a black male. I knew that I wouldn't have the necessary tools to produce a young boy into a productive man. I knew that I didn't have, those tools. So, that speaks to a lot of the black American stories. Some of us just don't have the necessary tools to help our children navigate through these experiences. And then we find out that they, decide to make poor choices. But, we're going to talk about, some of those choices that resulted in where you are today. But you did mention you wanted to be a Crip. Now, did that happen when you entered junior high school or high school? Because I did read somewhere where you even felt that you were purposed to become a Crip, which is a strong word, because of your environment. That's all that you saw. So did that happen in junior high school or high school?
You know what happened in elementary?
Elementary school. Wow.
Yeah, I was in the sixth grade the first time I ever saw the Crips. First time I remember seeing the Crips. One of the things that I have become very aware of is that things can be happening in our community, but sometimes we put blinders on,
Mm-hmm.
where we refuse to see what is really going on, and we only see things the way we want to see it.
Yeah.
And I understand that at one time I saw life like that, and I probably still do to a certain extent, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But at that time, that's what I saw, and that's what I wanted.
Wow. Wow. So that just speaks more about, your environment, what you saw that contributed to the product called Freeway Rick Ross. Now, desensitized. A lot of us are desensitized because we grow up in these type of environments. And I'm going to be fully transparent. Even walking on my way to the studio, I stopped by to see my parents, and I had to run because they started shooting 9 shots. And I'm just like, okay, how am I supposed to show up, in the studio and be this productive person and have this conversation while I just escaped a battlefield and could have lost my life? So considering your environment at such a young age, at the age of 3, seeing your uncle shot and killed by your mom, and then entering into public school from Catholic school, which is a huge shift, did you find that, you were desensitized, or were you still fearful but had to mask it?
No, I felt that the way we lived in South Central was the way everybody lived in the world. I thought
Mm,
that, I don't know, it's funny how, like, you start to believe, well, everybody has days in a month that there's no food in the house.
yeah,
Everybody has times in the year that their lights get cut off and water is off, and that somebody has to come over and rig up the lights and rig up the water so that you have water and lights in the house.
right.
And that people get killed all over the world like that. People fight all over the world over a dollar bill or over a can of beer, and sometimes that fighting turns into where one of them gets killed.
Right.
I felt that was normal.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes, crime and violence, it does become normal. I remember growing up in the projects as a kid. We knew every single day when they were going to shoot. And we said, okay, at 3 o'clock, we're going to just go inside real quick and we'll come back out at 3:10. And we just continued to play box ball in front of the building like it was normal. So this
Right.
happens a lot, as adults. And it is so important for us to unpack that trauma. But then another pivotal moment happened to you in junior high school. Still gang territory, but wasn't there a blood who put a gun in your face and you were staring down the barrel of a gun in front of your locker in junior high school?
It was. But the good thing is that he wasn't after me.
Mm.
It felt like he was,
Hmm.
but it wasn't. The gun wasn't for me. It was for the guys that I was hanging out with.
And they left you.
And yeah, and it terrified me to be staring down the barrel of a gun, something that I had saw fired before, and with the incident with my uncle. So was definitely a terrifying moment and a pivotal point in my life.
Yeah.
That I started to understand that you had to be careful who you were hanging out with.
So true. So how did you handle that situation? I mean, did you try to talk yourself out of the situation? Did you remain quiet? What did you do afterwards? Because there are kids who may be listening, or young adults listening to this conversation who feels as if they have to protect or defend themselves, and then they wind up dead. And then, we're carrying them in the funeral. So how did you respond to staring down the barrel of a gun?
Well, I was paralyzed for a second, totally taken back, to turn around and have a gun, pointed in your direction, feeling that it was pointed at me, specifically. But if he wanted to kill me, he could have easily.
And were you okay with that? Were you okay with that at that time? Because some people I've seen 13, 14-year-olds who say, you know what, I'm ready to die. Were you ready to die at that point? Because by then you had already seen enough violence and, you thought you were purposed to be in a gang. So were you ready to die?
No, I was not ready to die. I had already started to think about winning Wimbledon, going to the U.S. Open.
Right.
I had been playing tennis at that time a couple of years, and I had started to see things that other people in South Central LA weren't seeing.
Right.
And I wanted a part of that.
So before we, jump into tennis, just talking about some of those pivotal moments at already such a young age, it makes me think about nature versus nurture. So do you think that yourself, Freeway Rick Ross, was born as a result of nature or nurture or both?
I never thought about that.
That's a good one, huh, Rick?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to give that some thought.
Yeah.
You got me there.
Yeah. I remember one question that was asked of me. I went to a conference led by Oprah Winfrey, and she asked, well, who are you? And the answer can't be, you're a mom, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're in media. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't even at the time, communicate who I was. So I'm glad that, you're going to think about that, because who we are today and the names that we choose to give ourselves, because, people don't know my nickname is Candy, what made Candy be born, so I definitely want you to think about that. I'm going to circle back to you, after this conversation. I'm going to ask you for the answer for that question offline, but let's just go into tennis, because you did mention that. But tennis, growing up in the hood, people don't think that that's a sexy or masculine type of sport. So what did your community, what did your peers say when you went out every day to practice tennis?
Well, they thought tennis was a sissy sport. They would say stuff like that. That black men don't play tennis. That you should be trying to play football or basketball. But I usually don't let people dictate to me what I do.
Right.
My mom always said, boy, you got a hard head. and that hard head works both ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works against you. And I had pretty much made up my own mind that I wasn't going to let my community dictate to me what I did.
That's good. That's good because, once again, when you see violence be normalized in your community, sometimes you find a lot of followers being born. So this story, your whole story to me just speaks of strength and fortitude and resilience. And I'm hoping that someone listening and tuning in can take your life stories and impart your experiences on someone else so that they can probably, navigate their life in the right direction. But earlier in the conversation, you did mention that one of your role models and motivating icons was Arthur Ashe. So did you watch him a lot on television playing tennis?
I did. Every chance I got. I used to couldn't get enough of Arthur Ashe.
And
it was
that's odd.
amazing to see.
That's odd.
A black man fight through so many obstacles.
Exactly.
I saw people spit at him on the tennis court.
Yeah.
Other opponents spit at him on the tennis court, and he was able to navigate himself through those situations. And I always wanted to be a person that could navigate myself the way he navigated.
Well, that was a great role model to have. But, besides Arthur Ashe, I did, see somewhere where you also looked at blaxploitation films, and Superfly was also one of your motivating and driving forces. Is that true?
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember, but in the late 60s and early 70s is when they started putting out these black exploitation movies.
Yeah.
And just like right now, the way our young people are getting most of their information from hip-hop, at that time we were getting most of our information from R&B singers as well as the movies.
Yeah.
When I look back at my life, I remember how much I used to love James Brown. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. I'd rather live on my feet than down on my knees.
Yes.
And I didn't know where those principles came from until after I got older and I started to re-listen to some of that music and hear some of the things that he was saying that we were practicing in the streets, even though we were practicing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I believe that some of the things that he talked about in his music is some of the things that gangbangers started to live by, but with the wrong purpose.
Yeah.
But after I saw the movie Superfly, I had a new hero. My hero was no longer Arthur Ashe, even though I still had a lot of love for Arthur Ashe. But I had saw a black man that wouldn't let a white man spit on him. He wasn't taking no mess off of nobody. And I said, well, you know what? I like a guy that can navigate around somebody doing that to him, but a guy that's not going to take that from nobody, I like him even more.
Me too. Me too. That's why I'm so excited to see this whole remake of Dolomite with Eddie Murphy. I am here for it. But just a tangible person who was also in front of you while you were honing your tennis skills. I believe it was Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams. Is that true?
No, it was another Richard Williams.
Oh, okay.
They have the story absolutely correct. The Richard Williams that I'm talking about taught Venus and Serena's dad.
Got you. So what about the sport of tennis did you find very appealing? Was it that you were able to take all of your frustration and aggression and hit a white ball? Because we all want to hit something white every once in a while. But I digress.
Well, my whole thing was to get out of the ghetto.
Got
I mean, one of the things I found out about myself is that I've been chasing money all my life. Had a little money.
Got you. So coming from a poor environment, and I don't want to be presumptuous and assume that your mom was on welfare, was she? So how did you? Okay, so how did you afford to step outside of your community where it was an influx of gang activity into this world of tennis where you had to have some sort of, I wouldn't say affluence, but you had to have some money. So how did you afford?
Well, when I first started playing, my friends gave me my first racket.
Okay. Nice friends.
They also got free tennis shoes, and when I started playing, they were already ranked, so they were getting free tennis shoes, free rackets, and sweatsuits, and so forth. And I kind of just fell in with them. And as I became better at the game, then there were people that helped me along the way. People like Otis Smith, Coach Smith from Dorsey High School. There were people that helped me along the way.
It's always good to have people who can help. And what I'm also learning as a grown woman is how to lean. Growing up in an urban environment that had a lot of violence, you can't show fear. It's seen as a sign of weakness. So sometimes we don't know how to lean and accept things from people. So I'm glad that at such an early age, you weren't armed with such a defensive mode where you didn't accept help from anyone. But, just transitioning, Jay-Z once rapped, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman." And for this line, it became real life for you because while at Dorsey High School, you started hustling and selling lunch tickets. And I love it. I love it. Now, every entrepreneur knows how to find a void and fill it. So tell us about that hustle, because that's a legal hustle that somebody could probably still do today, because lunch tickets or paying for lunch still exists here in New York City. So tell us about that hustle.
Well, what happened is I still stayed in South Central LA.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny the way things work. At Dorsey, those people didn't qualify for free lunch. There was only a few people at the school that qualified for free lunch. So at Bret Harte Junior High School, which was in South Central Los Angeles, everybody at the school almost qualified for free lunch. But at Bret Harte, nobody wanted to eat free lunch.
Right.
They wanted to be somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would do is they would sell me their lunch tickets for 10 cents, and I could take those same lunch tickets and take them to Dorsey and sell them for 25 cents.
Get out.
So that had become my hustle, that I would get lunch tickets from South Central,
Mm-hmm.
because they all used the same tickets. The district was the same district, so they used the same lunch tickets.
Wow.
And I would take those tickets from Bret Harte, and I would take them to Dorsey High School, and I would sell them to kids who didn't qualify for free lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and I would sell them.
I love when people can find a hustle. I'm just going to share a recent story for me about hustling, because I may be all professional, but like I said, I grew up in the project, so I got a hustler spirit in me too. But doing this media work, I'm always going to celebrity events and red carpets, and there was a time when I didn't even have a professional camera. I was just there, hoping one day I could just save up enough money. This was just last year. And I decided to sell, I don't even know if you know what is a nutcracker drink. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't.
Well, a nutcracker drink is just like a whole bunch of alcohol mixed together to form one drink. And I got a friend who, he was involved in illegal activity, but he knew how to make good drinks. And I gave him a whole bunch of money so that he could package everything and make individual nutcracker drinks. And for the month of July last year, I hustled and I had him sell them on the street so that I could make enough profits to buy me a professional camera. And now when I show up to red carpet events, I have my celebrity camera. But once again, I love well, it wasn't that legal, but I love when someone can find a void and fill it. So I just wanted to share, one of my personal stories with you. But also, while you were at Dorsey High, during your senior year, you were about to be recruited by Long Beach State. And it was at that time, because you were still illiterate at that time, correct?
Yes, totally.
So talk a little bit about when the recruiter came to recruit you to Long Beach State to give you a full scholarship, and that scholarship was declined because you were illiterate. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I had been working really hard at my tennis career, and was hitting the ball pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of my friends had went to major universities to play on their team, and I wanted to follow suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been going out to Long Beach State, practicing with the team a few times, and it looked like everything was going to be just okay for me when it was discovered that my grades and my reading ability wasn't in line with my tennis career.
Mm-hmm.
So the coach explained to me that there was no way that I could go to their school
Mm-hmm.
with my academic level,
Wow.
and my dreams was crushed.
Wow.
All of it.
So that
My
goes
hope
back.
of
That
becoming
goes.
a tennis player. Huh?
That goes back to the question that I asked you, and just gives you more food for thought. Was Freeway Rick Ross born as a result of nature versus nurture? So that's another example so that you can reflect on, so that you can, come up with your own answer. So college dreams shattered. And when the coach found out, or the recruiter for Long Beach State found out that you were illiterate, at that time, didn't word get out to the rest of the community that you were illiterate? They found out too.
Yeah. The whole tennis community started to know that that I was illiterate, and I slowly drifted away from the tennis scene, and I found myself back in South Central LA.
So now you're 18 years old, no job,
Yep.
no money, and then a friend comes along offering you $50 to drive stolen cars to a chop shop that seemed very appealing at the time. So did you feel by saying yes and taking $50 to steal cars to take them to the chop shop was your only resort?
Absolutely. I felt, when people making a career choice, and really that's what we do in the ghettos. Those are career choices that we're making. When we decide, we're going to be robbers, or we're going to be gangbangers, or we're going to be drug dealers. These are choices that the community has to make about their career. This is how I'm going to feed my family. This is how I'm going to take care of myself. So when I looked at stealing cars, at that time it wasn't even me stealing a car. I just looked at it as I was driving a car from one location to another location. I didn't feel that was that bad.
Right. I get you. But then you became good at it. And eventually you took over the stolen car ring, and then you got arrested on felony grand larceny charges, correct?
145.
Hello?
Say that again?
I said, and then you, that's okay. I said, and then you became good at it, and eventually you took over the stolen car ring, and eventually you got arrested on felony grand larceny charges. But then you were released. So, and then you started doing it again. Do you feel as if you would have served some real time during that time, that kind of would have navigated you away from a life of crime? Or you think that it was just another day and another thing that you saw in the hood every day?
Well, in order to stop, you have to have something else to fall back on.
True.
And if you don't have anything to fall back on, then you wind up going with what you know.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't have anything to fall back on. So I just went along with what I had.
Wow. And, this is what I'm really trying to get people to understand, because I was talking to an individual the other day who talked about someone who was a repeat offender. And I said, well, are you looking at the individual's circumstances, and do they have enough resources to make different types of decisions? Because when people enter into a life of crime, it isn't because they find crime fascinating. Some people do, but some people feel as if they don't have any other choice. So these choices that you were making, once again, where was your mother in this conversation?
Well, my mom, she was there. But again, like I said, for a woman to raise a boy or even a girl, and also having to work and not having the resources or the background to get the job done is hard.
Right.
And that's the position that I believe my mom was in.
Yeah. Your mom, she is the face of many black mothers here in America. And, she's the face of me, as well. So I understand that story, so much. But 50 must be the magic number, because another time, another one of your friends came to you and asked if you wanted to invest $50 into cocaine so you can flip and make a profit. And I think this is where we saw the introduction of who we know today as Freeway Rick Ross. Now,
absolutely.
So when he brought this powdery substance to you and you were unsure about it, how did you navigate through deciding, okay, this is something that I now want to enter into, from leaving, stealing stolen cars and taking them to the chop shop, and to now selling a powdery substance called cocaine?
Well, at that time, I was back in a position of desperation. I had absolutely nothing going on. My shop had been closed down. Um, I really couldn't steal cars anymore because I was fighting 7 counts of grand theft auto,
Mm.
and I was desperately looking for something. So when my friend, who was kind of like a big brother to me, told me what was going on with cocaine, uh, uh, I was very, very interested.
Right.
And now, being who I am today, and who have read over 300 books about life and about the mind, I understand that when he introduced me to cocaine, the influences that Superfly had on me,
Hmm.
when I watched that movie, played an effect on me making the decision that I made.
But also there was, a teacher, I believe his name was Mr. Foster. He was a previous
Yes,
teacher of yours that you bought this substance to, and so that he could explain to you what it was, and then you found out through his story and his honesty that he used to sell drugs as well. So
correct,
I say all these things
absolutely.
because once again, I'm just like, I feel that the people in your life who were supposed to help navigate you through these good choices helped contribute to you making these poor choices. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but do you think that, your teachers owed it to you, like Mr. Foster, to give you another side of success instead of exposing you to the drug game?
Well, most of the time people don't give you what they should give you. They
Mm,
give you what they
they,
know to give you,
yeah,
or what they have to give you.
got you.
And in that situation, uh, from both ends, Mike, the guy who showed me my first $50 worth of cocaine,
Hmm.
loved me like a little brother, and he felt that he was giving me the best thing that he had to give me.
Right.
And I believe that Mr. Fisher felt the same way uh, when he also assisted me.
So that particular teacher, one thing I did appreciate in him, telling you, okay, yes, this is cocaine, or I think it was Ready Rock, what you used to call it back then. Was it Ready Rock?
Ready Rock is what we used
Ready
to call
Rock
it.
is what you used to call it. I also, I can appreciate that he also explained to you the ins and outs of entering into the drug business and telling you the pitfalls, and also telling you that, he just made, I think it was what, like $200,000, and he traveled the world, but your goal at the time was only to make, what was it, $500?
5,000.
5,000. Wow. So then let's fast forward a little bit, because you entered into the cocaine game selling crack, and then by the age of 24, this really shows the entrepreneurial business acumen that you possess, because at the age of 24 you already had homes, hotels, a whole bunch of investment properties. You had a dozen crack houses and thousands of employees in St. Louis, New Orleans, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Indiana, North and South Carolina, Baltimore, Cleveland, Seattle, and Ohio, where you made the most sales. Um, Talk about that a little bit. How are you able to expand this business in an era where no one really knew what crack cocaine was?
Well, basically, what my formula was is that I looked for people who were in the same position that I was in.
Hungry.
If you find somebody that's desperate,
Yep.
um, that's hungry, they're almost willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And at that time, the black community as a whole was in a position of desperation. Reaganomics wasn't trickling down
Yeah.
the way they were supposed to. They cut out all of the social programs for blacks. They were starting to say that you shouldn't get benefits just because you're black.
Hmm.
You should have to earn whatever you got. And with that, it made our community ripe for almost any kind of entry into the drug business that a person was looking for.
Right, right. But then there came a point in time where you were introduced to an individual by the name of Oscar Danilo Blondon. And little did you know that he was a CIA informant. How were you introduced to him?
Well, I really bought the introduction, and he bought the introduction to me. We both paid $60,000, to meet each other. I knew of him, but I had never been formally introduced, and I didn't have his phone number. So a mutual acquaintance who was my supplier made the introduction.
So you said you had to pay how much for the introduction?
$60,000.
$60,000. And to you at that time, I'm sure that was just, basically nothing. There's something that you could be like, all right, I'm willing to do this.
Yeah, I was probably a millionaire when close, maybe maybe $500,000-$600,000 when they made the introduction.
And then let's just fast forward a little bit, because like I said, I'm just trying to get so much information in such a limited amount of time. But then 1996 happened, and you were arrested on conspiracy to buy more than 100 kilos of cocaine from a police informant. Was that police informant Blandon, or was that someone else?
It was Blandon. It was. It was. I was just getting out of prison.
Right.
Blandon had been to prison. I was still in prison, little to my knowledge. They were letting him call me from prison. And he was able to talk me into getting back into the drug business.
Right, because you were out at that time, and I believe you had moved back to
L.A.
L.A.
Yeah, I had been out of the drug business at that time about 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
I had sold drugs in 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
I had no intentions of dealing drugs. My plan was to get out. When I got out of prison, was to get into the music business. To also start doing some of the stuff that I'm doing right now.
Right.
Because I had already realized that the lessons that I had learned in the cocaine business, were some valuable lessons that a lot of people from my community didn't understand.
Yeah. But you mentioned the entertainment and the hip-hop industry, and I just want to capture that because, I don't think, a lot of people know that, back in the day and even maybe current day, there's a lot of drug money that was being used to fuel the entertainment industry. And you fronted the money for one of Anita Baker's albums. Is that true?
Her first album.
Her first album. How did that happen?
I mentioned to you earlier in the conversation about a guy by the name of Otis Smith who used to buy me tennis shoes.
Right.
So I had a run-in with him years later. When he was buying me tennis shoes, I was about 16 years old, and we had met for quite a few years, and I bumped into him at a tennis tournament where his son was playing, and we got reacquainted, and he found out that I had liquid cash, and he started talking to me about the music industry.
Wow. And then you could have potentially also signed Dr. Dre. Is that true?
Well, I should have. I should have been the king of hip hop.
Right.
I was in a position. I had Otis Smith, Dick Griffey. I was associated with these guys. I had so many opportunities. Tennis had gave me so much exposure to so many different influential blacks that now that I look back at it, I just shake my head. I just watched the documentary about the Black Godfather.
Yes, that was amazing.
One of my tennis buddies who played on my tennis team in high school was his personal bodyguard.
Oh, wow.
And he used to beg me to come and meet the guy. He was like, man, you guys are just alike. You need to come and meet him. And I was so headstrong at that time and young, too, 22 years old. I'm like, I would never go and meet him. And after I watched that documentary a couple weeks ago, I was like, man, I wonder where your life would have been had you went and met with that guy.
Right.
But it's a few people like that. I can remember the first time I met Don King in Las Vegas. If I would have asked him and told him, hey, I got $3 million. I want to go and work with you.
Right.
Where I would have been.
Yeah. Sometimes we always ask ourselves, had I made a different decision, where would my life be today? And I'm just a firm believer that, we're exactly where we're supposed to be, so that, we just don't beat ourselves up for what could have and should have and would have happened. But they always say that it's the closest people to you that get to you. Was it during your trial that you found out that Blandon was an informant, and were there other informants that surfaced as well during the trial?
No, I didn't know that Blandon was an informant until after we were going to trial. And I've had other informants. Yeah, I had childhood friends tell on me as well.
Wow. Okay, I just need you to, my engineer is telling me he needs you to just talk a little bit louder.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
So you said the other
how, how
informants,
long? How long are we gonna do this?
we have about another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So the trial ended and you were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, correct?
Correct.
And Blandon, he was sentenced, what was it, to 24 months in prison?
Yes, he got 28 months.
28 months in prison. Then after he was released from prison, he was hired by the DEA and salaried at $42,000 a year and given a green card to stay in the United States. Is that also true?
That's true, but the green card was illegal. They couldn't give him a green card.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, he shouldn't have been allowed to testify against me because he was what they call a convicted felon who was convicted of an aggregated felony.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that got him kicked out the country
Oh, I didn't know.
because, yeah, I studied the law and I found out that a convicted felon who is a alien, the only way that that person can stand to the country is if the attorney general themselves grant him permission, or the
Mm-hmm.
president of the United States.
Mm.
There's nobody else in the country that could give a convicted felon of an aggravated felon
Mm-hmm.
a green card.
Wow. And a part of that story too, I know we're running out of time, is that the CIA and the government was involved in the conspiracy because Blandon was working for them. But you were released from federal prison on September 29th, 2009 because you appealed that life sentence and got it reduced to just 20 years in prison. So the anniversary of your release from federal prison is quickly approaching. Do you face
It
any
is.
type of anxiety, or do you celebrate?
No, I don't really celebrate. I celebrate every day. Right
Gotcha.
now, I'm living the time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in one of the greatest positions in the world. Hard for me to sleep at night. It's like, I cannot believe that it's about to happen all over again.
Yeah.
What happened to me in the cocaine business now is about to happen to me in the marijuana industry.
A perfect segue. So tell us about your cannabis business.
Well, right now I'm down in Dallas. I just left Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and we're about to move into the marijuana industry in Oklahoma. We're starting a social equity program in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
We just finished applications in Los Angeles for a social equity program where we are making the city and the state of California allow blacks to get into this market.
Yeah, because they're blocking us.
At this time, this industry is being controlled by male
Mm-hmm.
Caucasians.
Yeah.
So I hooked up with a lady by the name of Bo Money,
Mm-hmm.
who was pushing a program called Social Equity. And when I got in and I found out about it, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world, because I never thought that I would be able to have a marijuana license.
Right.
And now that I've learned how to do that, it's like amazing.
Got
We
you.
probably need to go into that because that's a whole nother conversation that we probably can talk about.
Yes, I would
For
love,
hours.
I would love to have you to back on the show to talk about the cannabis industry, because I'm really encouraging more of us, blacks, to enter into the business, because the government is doing something to really stop us and not give us the license, as opposed to the alarming and large numbers that they're giving whites these licenses. So hopefully you can come back on the show and we can talk about that a little bit more. But I just have one final.
Let's set that up. Let's set that up for another day.
I sure will, but I just have one final question for you, and then I'm just going to let you go because I know that you have something to do. What's the difference between Ricky Donnell Ross and Freeway Rick Ross, and which are you today?
Well, you know what? Freeway is a he's a person that takes chances. Ricky is a little more conservative, they're both the same person though.
Okay.
But Freeway, he's gonna go out there, he's gonna get it at any cost. uh, he's just gonna make it happen.
Got you. Got you. Well, thank you for making this conversation happen. You have really blessed this space and my platform, Sonya on Air. So to you, thank you so much for allowing me to pick your brain, and thank you for being transparent and honest.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait until we talk again
Yeah.
so that we can really go into it.
Yes.
And everybody on there, you can follow me on all the social medias at Freeway. Thank you again.
All right, Rick. I'll talk to you soon so we can talk about your cannabis business. Take care. Bye-bye. So there you have it. There is so much more that I wanted to talk about with Freeway Rick Ross. His story is amazing. As I said a few moments ago, the anniversary of when he was released from federal prison is quickly approaching. So make sure that you give Rick Ross a shout out, the real Rick Ross, a shout out. That's something else that I wanted to talk about, because I don't know if you know that he sued rapper Rick Ross for his name. He was in prison. He's like, yo, who's using my name? And they had set up a telephone call where it is alleged that the rapper Rick Ross broke down. I don't know what that was about, but there was supposed to be an agreement where Freeway Rick Ross had put him on his call list so that the rapper Rick Ross could call him back so they can come up with some sort of resolve. The rapper Rick Ross never called him back. Years later, Freeway decided to sue. It took some time, and even Jay-Z was called to testify because at that time he was the president of Def Jam. The case just kept being postponed and postponed. And then eventually what happened is the lawsuit was dismissed several times. Like I said, he appealed it. And in 2013, rapper Rick Ross won and was awarded to keep the name based on a First Amendment ruling. So crazy, so crazy. But I encourage all of you to just continue supporting Sonya on Air. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Sonya_on-air, and miss a show, miss a lot. Catch all Sonya on Air shows on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Radio Public, 9953 Jams, and of course, my website, www.she.company. I hope I was able to normalize the celebrity experience for you, because this is exactly what Sonya on Air does. Thank you for tuning in. Stay true to yourself and love on yourself and others. Smooches, dolls. Mwah.